also creating space for myself and Steve to really provide nuggets and information that will make a difference in everyone's lives. So there's something I do at the beginning to just kind of bring everyone to a mood that can empower the room. So I'm going to give a little instruction. So first things first, if you can, I see a lot of legs crossed. We want to try to put both feet flat on the floor, and then get your spine in a nice straight position. So not lounging, not forward, but kind of nice and vertical. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do 30 breaths in, I call it a cycle. So there's no pausing at the top or at the bottom. Okay, no pauses at the top and bottom. So we're just going to go through 30 of those cycles. And then at the end, we're going to do a breath hold at the exhale. And then we're going to do a breath hold on the inhale. So pretty simple, 30 breaths, cyclical, and holds at the ending. So I'll lead you so you don't get lost or feel like you're lost. But then the important piece, just to make sure everyone feels safe, is we're going to close our eyes. So everybody can kind of just breathe and go inward. And the final point I'll make before we start is the intention of this is to really just let everything go, empty out. And so if your mind starts to run off on your to-do list, on where you came from or whatever's going on, try to just come back to your body and to your center, okay? And then we'll go from there. So invite everybody to close your eyes, and we'll begin in 3, 2, 1. And as you're doing this, you want to go in the mouth and out the mouth. Again, if your mind starts to wander, come back to center, come back to the nothingness inside of you. Really emphasize the inhale. Don't worry too much on the exhale. 3 more breaths. Big inhales. Final inhale. Exhale. And hold at the bottom of the exhale. Thank yourself for being here today. And we're going to go into the second cycle, and that's going to be it. In 3, 2, 1. On the second half, see if you can bring in twice as much oxygen on the inhale. And don't worry too much about the exhale. Take a couple catch-up breaths. Come back to the room by opening your eyes. Thanks for being here with us today. So a couple quick housekeeping items before we get rolling is this is Lunch and Learn. Michael Perry of the Perry Group, which I got Adrian here in the room. I got a couple of Perry agents. Just raise your hands. My peers. He's been running this to simply just bring community together. We've got agents in the room. We've got lenders. We've got title. We have inspectors. But to bring community together, because this is an industry with a lot of competition and kind of a lot of like rivalry. Which is okay and healthy. And I think there's times where we could really come together and learn from each other and grow and, show up differently for our community in the state of Utah. So that's why we're here today. So thanks everybody for being here. Thanks Steve for being here. And what are we doing at the start of this thing? But we will be hosting this event monthly down here in Utah County, and there's also one happening monthly up in the Salt Lake area in Sugar House, area group office. So if you have time and to pop into those, the whole idea is to just provide value to you. So thank you. Anything else I'm missing? Good. Are all cameras rolling? Okay. All right. So to get started with our event, so everyone understands, timing is right on point. So if you're wondering, we're just sitting around talking, it's very intentional. And then breathing in, and we're just about exactly when we're expecting to hear from Steve. I'm excited for this because I've been told by many people close to you that it's not as often as they would like to see and hear from you that you get on a stage or get in front of people and share some things. And more importantly on that is, this is a little off script. So Steve normally prepares and talks about what Steve wants to talk about. So today, we definitely, at the end, we're going to have a little Q&A. So if you guys are burning to ask him a question, we will have time for that, okay? But I'm going to be asking him questions that tend to be not as typical. Not that you wouldn't see it on maybe, social media or like what's a market update or something like that, right? It's very common for Steve to get those questions, right? So today what we want to do, and the main highlight is Steve has a very incredible background on his journey. And one of the biggest pieces that I love, and I've had some more intimate experiences learning from Steve personally. And he came on Edge Homes and was building during, 07, 08, 09. And that was a challenging time. And so as the economic state right now maybe isn't the same as that, but it still is a challenging time right now. And I wanted to really take the time and have Steve be kind of our inaugural starting guest, because he has nuggets of wisdom of like, what was it like? What was happening, right? His goal maybe wasn't to be, the best in the world right out of the gate. It was like, we need to survive this year. We need to get through next year or something of that nature. And I think we can beat ourselves up a lot by, why am I not going to the moon this year, right? So we're going to ask some questions to get to know him and get to know his heart, get to know some of that past. And with that, we'll begin. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, and make sure if one of our mics isn't good for you guys in the back, let us know, okay? So the first question, before I go first question, does anybody not know who Steve is? I think this is important. I think everybody does. The CEO of Edge Homes, what would you say annual volume is in dollars?
1 billion.
1 billion. Yeah, that's $1 billion plus. On your way to more, right? On your way to 2 at some point, right?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And Edge Homes is one of many builders in the area. Remarkable company. If you guys know my brand and my identity, there's a lot of engagement with Edge Homes. So just so you all know. Okay, so Steve, first question is, what is deeply important to you and why?
And Kyle did send some of these questions over, and I read them one time because they're personal questions,
yeah,
which I'm extremely uncomfortable with. Don't like them. Didn't like the questions. Was upset that Shelley, my executive assistant, had scheduled this, so I really don't want to be here. And I'm not excited to be here. Because I am, contrary to the Dos Equis man, I am the most boring man on the face of the earth. A little bit of background. I grew up in a family of 7 children. My mother is an immigrant, does not speak English very well. Grew up in an area where I would compartmentalize my life into 5 quadrants. The first quadrant was spent being told that you are inferior because of language, inferior because of financial status, inferior because of the weight to height ratio that I was packing around at the time. I was, at some point, became very aware that my abilities to read were significantly less than my peers. My ability to test was perhaps at the bottom of the class, and my scholastic abilities were a point of grave concern to those individuals around me. So as I thought about the question, the patented answer would be first children, first state, or second state, third deity or a higher power. And I think that I acquiesce to those, but I think that the number one important item to me is to be fair and equitable and to lift individuals around me. And I am keenly aware that there are those that are having a worse day, a worse week, a worse life. And I can remember at a very young age thinking that if I was ever in a position to change people's lives, it would be in an effort to change people's lives, to remind them that they are capable of whatever they want to be capable of, and that the voices of school teachers, ecclesiastical leaders, etc., somehow have to be drowned out. And my partner and I years ago decided that we wanted to give back to the community, and we build a home or two a year and give to families that are less fortunate. And I was at an event in Provo. Typically, I get the privilege of listening to my partner speak. He's much more eloquent and he's much more handsome. And he couldn't make it. So I found myself with a microphone and no words. And I looked over at a young man that was 7 years old. And it hit me really, really hard that was me 50 years ago, 45 years ago. And I saw fear. He had parents that didn't speak English. And I saw me. And so I asked his mother to come up. I asked for a translator. And I instructed the young man that I would expect that he would be carrying the microphone in my place in 45 years and giving back to those around him. And that he could be whatever he wanted to be, even though he was in a country that was scary. He was in a situation that was scary. And it was a reality check as to what 40 years can do to the heart and soul of a human. So I think number one would be that. And when I had the opportunity to fulfill part of that dream in '08 and begin a journey of home building and opening a business, it became very deep within my heart that I had the ability to change people's lives who didn't think that they would be able to have a home. It changed my perspective on my upbringing of what a roof and spaghetti meant around a table. And I realized that as a home builder, I would have the unique opportunity of being as intimately involved in people's lives as probably a therapist, coach, and or anything else from a distance. So all of the 1, 2, 3 of what we're supposed to say when we're mic'd up, I agree with all of those, but the first and foremost in my life would be hopefully to be able to leave a trail of people that feel better having met people with me and around me.
I love that. Thank you. I already think those that know Steve, this is already good. Just the depth and like knowing where it's coming from already changes my perspective on you on edge. So thank you. This leads into our second question. So with the success you've had, is money important to you and why?
Horribly inappropriate question. Offensive. If money is spoken about, it is kind of two camps. One camp of you're an arrogant prick. You shouldn't think about that because of when I tell people money's not important, I typically hear from people that share my last name. Yeah, all a-holes that have money say that money's not important. So there is a divide in the room. I understand. I'm cognizant of that. However, if you and I were in our log cabin in 1830 and you had a very tasteful buckskin loincloth on, and I had a bearskin loincloth on, and I said to you, Kyle, is having enough food for the winter important to you? And you said, no. I would say you are drinking too much whiskey, and you would in turn say, well, is having enough wood for the fire important to you? And I would say, no, I'm just going to tough this one out. And, you know, if I freeze to death, I freeze to death. So I think the question is self-explanatory. It is our commodity, and it is what we survive on. And it is discussed at a level that is significantly less important to some than others. My mother grew up in an orphanage. She doesn't understand how to write a check. Is money important to her? She would say no, but she would also say, I need money for the landscaper, and I need money for groceries, and I need. And that is the commodity. And so as I got older and I realized that stocking shelves at Macy's grocery store was a lot of fun. And it was a lot of fun to just chat with the boys all night long about every problem in society. And then I realized that I am eroding the skeletal structure of my body through physical labor. And I realized from a good friend that helped me understand that I think like a poor person and that my aspirations were very, very low in what I was qualified to do. it became very apparent that if I was going to spend the bulk of my hours that I am awake earning, that I kind of wanted a lifestyle that allowed me to effectively bless those around me. The vehicles, the cars, the houses, the fancy haircuts that Kyle has and those around me have, and the fancy jewelry and everything else that is part of the culture in the business that we're in is very important. I have a brother that drives a Maserati. He likes his my mother's maiden name of Del Carlo. He likes the Italian side of life. And he asked me a question 5 years ago. And he said, why don't you wear a Rolex? And I think I had a really nice Timex Twistoflex on that my dad had left me after his passing. And I had to think about it. I didn't have an answer for him. And I think what money has done for me is allow me to sleep, allow me to have those around me that have needs. And it is essentially the vehicle that I think you and I would have had in the 1800s, where somebody would call and say, not call, but knock on the log cabin. And we would say, yes, let us hitch up our wagon. Let us do this. Let us bring over apples. Let us become part of a culture. Because when I walk out of Texas Roadhouse with my daughter, 17 years old, and we have a bitch fest about how full we are, and we ate too many rolls, and life is horrible, and then you approach a man that is sitting with an infant in a stroller saying, I just need some money. I think what he's saying is, I actually just need a hug, and I actually just need something for my baby because I don't feel real good about myself. And the ability to reach into your wallet and say, don't make eye contact with me, but here you go. And then go home and realize that, is it important to me so that I can have more and so that I can post on social media, which I don't have, to make me feel better? No. But to be able to assist and help and raise and give to others, it's, to me, fundamental to probably what my DNA is.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
So if anybody ever needs money, I will give you the code to my truck. I will tell you what's in my glove box. And if you do good with it, you can have whatever the hell you want, because it isn't what I am serving. It is what serves me.
Thank you for that. And I think one of the times this past year when I was in your office, there was this conversation we had, and there was a period, if those of you that know kind of my past a little bit, there was this kind of rocket ship to being in a little bit of a limelight and a lot of attention, and there was some flashiness and whatnot. And I remember sitting with Steve and having some moments, it's actually interesting, fatherly moments, where my father's here in the back of the room, and he said something very similar that Steve said to me. And it was a kind of a wake up moment for me of like, why is this important? And I was doing it simply to do more deals, get more traction, right? But it called my attention to, what am I actually representing? And am I providing value to others? Am I actually doing things for others? Or am I just say, look at me, look at me? And I think if you go back to that moment, you could probably see the difference. It's not don't show it, but it's why? What are we doing? What's the purpose? What's the impact? And it's not show it for attention. It's hey, we'd love to support you. We'd love to help you. This is what's possible. So thank you for that moment, and thank you for sharing that with us. Next question. Why does the world need the gifts you bring?
They don't.
Wow. Done and said.
I had a conversation with Parker yesterday. Parker was offended at some of the behavior in society of individuals that believe because of their statute in life, and the money that they make, they are entitled to belittle, berate, and look down upon other individuals in this world. Yeah. And I said, show me an individual that rises because preemptively to the rise, they will feel real good. They will treat those around them with respect and dignity. And then there's a certain point where you start reading the newspaper and you believe it is you. And the moment that that triggers is the moment that decline begins. and you not preemptively, you will, at the end of this journey of the thought process that it is you, will begin to fall and eventually hit the ground before you can pick yourself up again and say, okay, I think I need to realize I need everybody around me. Not only do I need them around me, I'm better with them around. And so I guess the gift that I would say is I have individuals in this room that I have been friends with for 20 plus years. I would rather play pickleball with Matt and watch him fall on his back and get hurt than most things. So we have, you do, Matt. The gift I think that we all give, which is the gift of love and the gift of friendship and the gift of a kind word, and the gift of that is significantly more than the gift of. And I think if I could say that the story that I have as far as my life and what I was born into and where I am at right now, maybe the only gift is that if Maddox can do it, anybody can do it. And so you can look at the individual and say, if there's an illiterate individual that is able to provide and have a fun living, then I can do it. So I think I'm that whooping boy up on the hill that people can just say, if he did it, I can do it.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much. But yeah, thank you.
You're welcome, Kyle. I feel like he wants to say thank you again.
No, I did.
Can I also confess during the breathing exercise, I did want to peek and see if everybody was making fun of me, and I was the only one breathing because I have never done that before.
You're like,
I didn't peek because I kind of felt like it was a prayer, and I didn't peek because I wanted to indulge, and I will do that again. So thank you for the breathing exercise.
Absolutely.
I do breathe deeper than you though, so I think I only got 15 and not 30. So I was off on my cadence.
That's okay.
A scotch. And then do you breathe heavy like that? Well, often, or is that just for exercise?
It's to make people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So collectively, we're all saying thank you.
Yeah.
It was a great way to start.
Yeah. And I think I keep saying thank you guys. And I've talked to several of you in the room before this event. Is like, I didn't know how you were going to respond to these questions. I do see me super uncomfortable and like, well, what are we doing? And I love what we're hearing. It's a side that is very empowering. So we'll continue. This was a little bit unique because it's the part 2 that I like. It says, what are some of your biggest fears? And why do you think you have them? So why do you think you have them? It's interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of a bullshit question, actually. Because essentially what you want me to do is get naked right here and point out my imperfections. Because this is what inhibits us from succeeding, is fear. Yeah. And the biggest fear that I will have and that will be my constant companion is poverty. And it is opening up the cupboards and not having, and it is opening the refrigerator and not having, and it will forever be the taste of powdered milk and Christmases without without the items that I knew my friends would have. It is the fear of buying a pair of Kmart tennis shoes with 4 stripes and cutting one out and sharpening over the holes and saying I have Adidas. So the fear is going backward, and the fear is not having, and the fear is wasting during times of plentiful and not having during the times of famine. I have a dear friend that is the craziest human being on earth. His name is Mark Bingham. He sold directories for $580 million. He is now worth $1 billion. He cuts his own hair with a Flowbee. 85 years old. He owns 2 pairs of jeans. I bought him a truck. He returned it because there's only 2 things in life a man can pick. That's his woman and his truck. They didn't, by the way, there's not a return policy on Chevy trucks. And one day I asked him, do you ever think about money? Because you're the you are the cheapest tipper on the damn face of the earth. Like 50 cents is not a good tip at Ruth's Chris. It just, under any circumstances, Mark, that doesn't work. And he said, I will always think like a poor, I can't use the expletive because it's not politically correct. I will always think like a poor blank, blank, blank. And it never goes away. And it is the caffeine in the morning. It is the caffeine at night. It is the hamster wheel that I get onto when I think, what am I capable of doing? And it is the motivation. And it has been interesting to watch what fear does to people, because I believe it's paralyzing to some. And the fear pushes them into a corner, pushes them under their bed. They're scared of the dark. They're scared of making a decision. They're scared of moving forward. And I realized at 20 years old, on the double-decker bus that I was on in Scotland, because I like being around people that smoked more than the folks on the first level of the bus, that I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted to do in life. And everything about knocking on a door and everything about talking to people was paralyzing. When I was leaving on my LDS mission, I had never heard my dad speak in public. And he had often talked about his fear. And so when I was leaving, I said, hey, Dad, I'm going to call you up to give a few remarks, a few commentary, or like share some thoughts. Yeah. He didn't show. And I realized that I fought the same thing, which was just this fear of going out and talking. And I realized at some point that I actually have a huge love of talking at city council meetings. I love being called greedy effing developer. That is kind of what I hope is on my headstone. And that I have really, really enjoyed, not just liked, but enjoy going to a meeting where I know I am going to be beat up by the entire community, and every mother whose son has played in that field or lost their whatever in that field. I developed the Provo Theater. I had 4 individuals that were in their 80s that said they had lost their virginity in the parking lot at the Provo Theater. I've never laughed so hard in all of my life and couldn't get my composure. So the fear for me is fear of embarrassment publicly and fear of poverty. And you roll all of that up, and that has become the rocket fuel, as you indicated earlier, that allows me to do things that I am not comfortable doing professionally.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, then I think we could probably skip this question. I mean, unless you have further thoughts on it, but I feel like on several of these you've hit into this, but this question is, what is your greatest strength and how has it helped you in your life? And you're talking about how, fear being a strong propellant in where you are. Is there anything that you feel maybe different than fear that you feel you were equipped with that helped you get to where you are?
Could you repeat the question?
What is your greatest strength and how has it helped you in your life?
Yeah, the greatest strength is the greatest weakness.
Yeah.
And I think the reason is it will never leave my heart. It isn't a temporary emotion. It is the substance.
Yeah. Totally.
I feel like you want to say something, Kyle.
No, I didn't.
No, editorial.
I'm not supposed to talk.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I have a question for you, Kyle. What is your greatest fear? I showed you mine. If you'll show me yours, that would be very much appreciated. We have some perverts in the audience too.
That's a good question.
You wrote it.
Yeah, I do a lot of personal work, so I'm trying to figure out like, okay, where am I at? I think what I would say for me, and it's kind of underlying in a lot of what I do, is the notion of being stuck, being caught, being controlled by the system, and all of the things that there's a beautiful side to capitalism, and there's also a dark side. And it's, how do we get people to kind of, I talk about this a lot, but like a lot of people are walking around as zombies. They're just doing their routine, consuming, right? The TV tells them you're not enough unless you buy ABC, and then we're victim to it. And we do it. And we stay in the cycle. And we do things that can cripple our families. We do things that can cripple our relationships, our loved ones, because we put what people think in front of us, and as our highest priority. And so for me, it's knowing that that is so embedded in our culture, in life. And it's like, how can we change that? But that's why I asked you the money question, is like, I know you're someone that has it, but it's not floating around the room. And I absolutely respect, honor, and love that. And so how do we get more people to be happy right where they are, and instead of trying to be more every day? So yeah, I think my fear is people I care about, people I love, being caught up in that cycle and not fully living.
Thank you.
Oh man. We're almost there on the questions. So this is good. So, how do you handle failure in your life, and what can others learn from failure?
Failure is an interesting question, though. I don't believe in failure. I believe it's just an experience that we learn from. So as I look around and I feel as if the world identical to you is really kind of stuck on a conveyor belt, and there are setbacks and there are discouragement. And the human nature of individuals that rise above has always intrigued me as to how a crisis is handled different. And it can be a very similar crisis, and one rises and they become more enlightened and they change their life and they become better from that experience. And others need to go to their MD and get prescriptions to be able to handle the effects of that. And that becomes the character of who they are, that defines their life. And I have been blessed with individuals around me from a very young age that had overcome what I would consider catastrophic failures and risen and become more content with who they are. You mentioned Edge Homes as part of my life. My partner's daughter, Maddie, called me her stepdad the other day, which I found fascinating because I spend that much time with Gordy. Yeah. And Gordy is one of those individuals that doesn't have bad days, doesn't have good days. He just has great days. And he's on that and has had major setbacks in life. And so I believe that I would look at it and contain it, compartmentalize it, put it in a Rubbermaid container, and know that it's there. And if I need to go to that as a reminder, if I need to go to that to reevaluate it later in life, or if I need to go to that and just sit for a day with that failure and be okay with it. If I want to sit by the headstone, if I want to sit by something that didn't go as I wanted, it's always going to be there. It's not going to, that event will not change. And it's fun to go back to at my age and look at it and think I would evaluate that problem significantly different. I was told 100 years ago that humor is tragedy plus time. That's a hard thought, but it really is as I look back at the mistakes that I've made in life. Professionally, when I thought I was a baller and I did a 3-lot subdivision in Pleasant Grove and it cost me money. But I would tell everybody, yeah, I'm a successful developer. Look at me. And I didn't even understand. And those were big failures financially for me. They were not in terms of how I view the world. And I think it really is a state of mind as to how we handle or want to process failures in life. Yeah. And I spoke, didn't speak, I presented in Mapleton City last night. Yeah, I heard. It's a 1,000-lot community. And it is one that I don't cherish above any other community. I don't think it's more important than any other community. But after meeting the city planner, Sean, who was a delightful man, 3 days later, I read in the newspaper that a young lady in Springville was murdered by her boyfriend because she had broken up with her boyfriend. It was Sean's daughter. And the reality and the totality of being on this journey for 9 months professionally with Sean, as I said goodbye to a daughter that left on a mission months ago, but during the same process, I am humbled at how Sean has risen above the hate, risen above the anger, risen above resentment, risen above everything that I would feel, which is planning retaliation, containing the emotion. And Sean has taken that tragedy and taught me how to process and how he evaluates things. And I think one of the most difficult phone calls that I have ever made was to a stranger that I met 4 days before to offer condolences. And I don't know if you guys have ever made a phone call and you just beg that they don't answer the phone. Like, that was maybe the most earnest prayer that I have had in years, to say, I really hope Sean doesn't answer the phone, because I don't want to talk to him. I want to be able to be a coward. I want to be weak, and I want to leave a trite message of, hi, Sean, this is Steve, and I've got some flowers on there, right? Like, that was the impulse. And I found myself in the middle of this voicemail grieving for him and leaving words that I wouldn't typically leave. And I was grateful that Sean, in this process of presenting last night, gave me a nod, like, everything's okay. And it was that for me in this journey of entitlement with what we do. I realized that Sean was part of what you have been part of, Kyle, which is financial independence. We talk about capitalism as maybe it's evil. I think the distinction between classes is something that we can address as a nation at some point. But I also think that the principles that you have taught, which is independence, investing in you, investing in the future, investing in something that has longevity that will start making returns to you, and ultimately a place where life will happen within these homes and within these streets and within these swimming pools and within the pickleball courts. Children will learn language on the pickleball courts they couldn't learn anywhere else. And this will be part of Sean's journey in healing. And so this dynamic of this is business and I never cross business with my own personal life, I think is, for me, not okay. And I think the more in business that you can take the talents that you've been given and the talents that you are developing and help lift others to feed themselves. And for some reason, sometimes in real estate, it's known as, oh, you're greedy. Well, I can just tell you, the first horse I bought, I thought a saddle went on backwards. And an old farmer rancher that I met in West Lehigh, Morris Hicks, after calling me a lot of names, said he would teach me how to ride a horse. I bought one I didn't know how to ride. I never looked at him as being greedy. I never looked at him as he's just in it for this or he's in it to sell me a horse. And I think in real estate, we've got to look at it the same way and say what we do is noble. What we do is incredible. What we do is one of the greatest things. And we ask the most inappropriate questions. We ask, how much do you make? We ask, how much do you have to spend? We ask, what's your risk tolerance? I mean, all these doctors that really a brain doctor is asking, we have to ask, and we have to be in people's living rooms. And the fear that we talked about earlier, as soon as you can get out of your own head and say, I'm doing this for other people, then when the letters come about our first Christmas in a home, or the first time we get a paycheck, or the first time I have done something that I never thought I can do, it's a little bit of, okay, this is not only a great occupation, it's a fun occupation. And when you see people and you realize the differences that they make. So in 2008, as we began this journey and the fear, and then you start realizing that what we do is bigger than what we are, it becomes really fun. And all of the voices that you hear about our industry kind of become moot to me. I don't hear it. And I don't hear the word greedy developer. And I don't hear you or this. And when I read articles on KSL and I want to just say, you know, you're making fun of our industry, but you're going to the school that we developed, and you're going to the church that we developed, and you're on the road that we developed, and you're shopping at Target that we developed, and you're shopping at and eating at, living at on this industry. I think all of us need to just realize that there is something higher, and the general population sometimes has a tough time equating that what we do brings inherent value to a community. Yeah. And the end all be all is not always just computers or silicon slopes.
There. I love it. I mean, irregardless of opinion on like Elon, he's doing physical things, right? There's development with actually hard things. And that's something that I see I come from the world of tech. I was in the computer all day. All of us that were there's thousands of us that work in a building, and our product is in the air, I guess to say, right? It's in the cloud. It's in that it's not tangible. I mean, just out of curiosity, like, what's your opinion on kind of that of tangible hard? You CEO of Edge Homes, that versus, tech and the digitalness. Do you feel like they're equally important, or is one more important than the other? What are your thoughts?
I think they're equal. I am running a balance sheet that if we were doing this without, I am running a schedule if I was doing that without. I am running commodities if I was doing that without. I'm buying lumber. Our lumber budget is about $3 million a month. I'm buying futures. I was asked by my daughter to give a school presentation because I'm a builder. And the teacher looked at me and was a little surprised I wasn't in suspenders and had a tool belt. And I realized that I was going to a presentation thinking that a school teacher thought I was giving a presentation on a hammer and nails, and I don't own a tool. So what we do, I could not run at the volume that we run at without technology. I think, though, that as an industry, we are 85 years behind because our houses are still built the way that they were built. And in my career, I hope to be able to see that we are building homes and warehouses where we don't have slips, falls, and missing fingers, and we don't have waste. And what waste we have, we put back into the economy. And when I see the waste piles that we have on our job sites, and I think there's a lot smarter people that should be helping my industry, and I'm raising my hand saying, please, technology, move over here. I know it's not fun, and I know it's not sexy, and I know it's not a lot of things, but this is the amount of green that we are wasting. So I would hope that that industry can shine down on my industry and teach us how to become more efficient and deliver homes to our buyers and families that need it at a discount when we talk about housing affordability and crisis in the state of Utah.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's exactly going back to your ties, that 7-year-old boy that you talked to, right? And what can you be in the future? It comes through hard work. It comes through material things. It's like, hey, let's learn and do, and whatever your path is, I hope you're where I am today.
Corey Shelley I'm not sure what he's doing to that pole, but he's standing behind it. He keeps dancing back and forth. Owner of First Colony Mortgage. He was 12 years old-ish when I got into the industry. And in 1999, there were not going to be any realtors. There were not going to be any title companies, and there were not going to be any lenders. All three of those are going to be wiped off the face of the earth, and a computer was going to replace it. The only advancement that I have seen in our industry in 23 years is DocuSign. That's it.
Fair.
That is it. I don't know what that means, other than for those of you that wake up in the morning thinking, I can make a difference in the world. I can name 2,000 things that would make our industry more efficient. And we still have people come to our office and physically sign, and they go through the same tree of papers, and nobody reads it. And then they sign. Nobody has any idea what they're signing. And I keep telling the title people in the room, when in the hell are we going to be able to do this electronically? When are we going to take the cars off the road? And Corey, like, seriously, do we need an appraisal? Because I can get on county records. And our industry has to change and will change. But the problem is there's still dinosaurs involved like me that are saying, no, I just want to build homes. And so I'm inviting your counterparts to the dark side.
I liked it. What do you think, just pulling that thread, what do you think is preventing that change? I mean, you say 23 years, DocuSign, how do we see something more in the next 23 years?
it's capital, and capital follows sexy, and there's nothing sexy about traditional business. And the car business, Elon drinks different water than we drink. So he was a disruptor and thought, wow, I think that I can take the same stupid idea that Henry T came up with, but I'm going to put a different motor in it, and I'm going to make it have to plug into the wall and be wildly inconvenient. And I'm just going to fool the public and burn coal and price, and then we'll run electric and say it's cleaner. And he's an innovator. Well, he's right. And at some point in the next 20 years, we will be able to have an efficient electric vehicle. This is just like the first combustion motor that's a mess and slow. And there's people like me that want to still ride horse and buggy in the form of a Hellcat and hear the motor. And then you get in a Plaid and you think, yeah, this is better, but I'm empty inside and there's no soul to this car because it reacts like it's supposed to. And I think what is preventing it is that the capital stack in the United States and preliminarily other countries, but here we are consumers and we are independent contractors, and that independent contractor is willing to work for less wages than what a factory would. And so as we have immigration policies in this country that don't allow us to have factory workers, we ship that overseas. And to think about framing a home in China and putting it on a boat and moving it over here, you already complain about my build time. I've just added an extra time at the port with Joe Biden trying to get products to Utah. So I think at some point there'll be enough capital to enter into our space and say, we can turn this into a production type home, and we can create efficiencies so that the job site is safer, less waste, more green. And we'll probably just take some act in the future of saying it's cost prohibitive to do things the way that we've always done it. But you've been on our construction sites. It's no different than if we had built a log cabin in 1890. It's still a very manual process built on the backs of human beings.
Yep. Yeah. Interesting. Before we go to the final question, I before we got into the next 23 years and what that might look like, we were talking about kind of failure. And you made the point that for some individuals, it can be crushing. And for others, it can be inspiring, empowering. Just so we can kind of take something away from that, what are your thoughts on how do we be someone, or what is it that is different from someone who pulls and grows from it versus gets crushed by it? Suggestions, thoughts do you have on that?
I think it's willing to look at yourself in the mirror with lights bright and make a conscious decision that you will not be impacted by the results of failure. And we are our worst critic.
Yep.
We judge ourselves more harshly than anybody else on the face of the earth.
Yep.
We are our worst enemy when it comes to critiquing. We are the worst enemy to get on a hamster wheel and run with a bad thought about ourselves. We are constantly looking at our phones to compare what others have. We think for some reason that the picture that is posted online is a one shot, not 1,000 shots selected and filtered and put on there to show a bicep. I think that there are some realities, and I don't want to betray a confidence, but I was speaking with an individual yesterday that had some big blows in life. And I expressed to him that the reason that he is who he is because of the tragedies. He didn't agree with me at first. I could tell by his body language. He recoiled a little bit. And then the thought was kind of an obliging maybe. And it would be interesting to see today how he would feel to think who he is and what he's formed by. So there was a mental skill that I used to employ, which was to look at others' misery, and I felt better about myself. Not a great place to be, not a great headspace to be. And yet it was really nice to be able to say, well, that person has a bigger stomach than me, so I feel really good about my diet. Let's go to Beto's. I could use 2 bombs and a Diet Coke. And I felt better about eating the 2 Beto's burritos. There came a point where I realized that it wasn't for me. It wasn't the weight. It was the fact that I have an obligation to 6 children, and I felt as if my youngest deserved the same physical father that the first one did, meaning that I am willing to get off the couch and go and do. So I just think that we spend so much more time on what others think rather than what I think. And there's this sense that we have, I guess, that feels like we've always got we need to worry about others. And if you get on an airplane and they run through that exhaustive, when the oxygen falls, you've got to take care of yourself first. I think I subscribe to that more now than I ever have, which is it's okay to think about yourself before you can give to others.
No, I love that. I mean, there's a quote, we've talked about this quote a lot, but it's a lot of people think like, I'll take care of you and you can take care of me. And the quote is, I'll take care of me for you if you'll take care of you for me. Mm-hmm. There's so much more depth there. Mm-hmm. No, thank you. So looking in the mirror, I mean, there's some people in this audience that we talked about that, and it's really important. So we're going to go on to our final question here. And we're going to invite you all to participate a little bit. So if you've got your phone, pull out your phone. Steve is supposed to have been tagged. We're trying to grow his social presence, whether he likes it or not. He doesn't care. But we're going to kind of connect. And this question that I'm going to ask Steve, we're just going to take a couple minutes, probably like 1 or 2 minutes for you guys to, your first response, your initial response, whatever you're like, hey, this is my answer. Let's comment, go to the original post of this event. So on my Instagram, so go to Instagram, _, and I think it's like the 4th post down or something. It's not the second one from Perry Group. It's the other one. Well, there's 2 that look like that. Not the most recent one, but the original one. So the most recent one will probably go down. So in the comments, this is a signature question that we're going to ask every guest that comes on. So we're going to be able to hear Steve's answer, but I also want to get to know each one of you more and connect with you. And I'll be reaching out and just engaging more on this. And it's a more of a depth question than a surface of the question. So the question is, what makes you come most alive? And aliveness, think of it as where do you lose track of time? Where do you maybe feel like a kid again? What makes you come most alive? You could drop a sentence or 2 or 1 word, whatever feels good to you. And as you're jotting that in, and as Steve is thinking on his response, this is a question I love because I think back when you asked me about my fear, I feel like the zombiness that we're all walking around with is preventing aliveness. People aren't living, they're not expressing, they're not excited. They have moments, we have blips, but we're like sedated. And I love this question because I would love to see each one of us doing things more often that we absolutely love. And it's contagious. It's contagious to the industry, it's contagious to our families, it's contagious to those around us. So again, what makes you come most alive? Okay, so with that, we'd love to hear from you, Steve.
Probably not a good answer, but
okay.
But risk. I love putting a deal together with other entrepreneurs. And I tell my land team, when a woman tells you no, that's no. When a business owner or city council or an entity tells you no, that means you didn't ask correctly. And I liken that to parents who are at a grocery store and the child says, can I have, and they start going through M&Ms or whatever is on that shelf. Can I? And what usually happens is shut your mouth and yes, you can have this one, go away. That's risk to me, which is I want to see what I am capable of doing. I met with 2 companies this week that would be an augmentation to home building that would lend itself to some efficiencies. And I love the fact that I want to explore another business. I want to see what that means, and I want to see what the potential of that company is from a growth structure. Having said that, I have not put $1 on a table in Vegas. I have not put $20 or $100. I have not put money into a machine that would have a payback. and I am adverse to frivolous risk. So controlled risk with outcomes that are tangible and real, adding to the bottom line for no other reason than to say, I didn't know I was capable of doing that. That sometimes translates to how fast I can go on the freeway without getting pulled over. Not always as effective because you're not sure who is in the hole in the wall on I-15.
Yeah. No, I love that. And the depth around risk is remarkable. And those of you that are in the room, we're going to ask this question a lot, and the answer can change.
Could I give an example?
Yeah.
All of you that are saying the market is bad, or the market is slow, or I'm going to wait, or our machine at Edge Homes absorbs 150 to 200 lots a year. We do not go to the lot ferry and say, I need you to deliver to me 150 lots, which means that I am buying land inventory for 2025, 26, 27 currently. I have 6,000 to 8,000 lots. My land bucket is somewhere between $75 and $105 million a year to replenish. Builders' worst nightmare is having too much inventory or not enough. And there is a fine line between what that is. As you know, the banks have screwed things up pretty damn bad right now. The feds are breathing down their back, and the banks are saying, hey, we used to be your best friend, but we can't go to lunch anymore because we can't lend you money. We, as a company, have taken the position that this is the year to buy. We have taken the position that interest rates are going to collapse at some point. We have taken the position that we will continue to sell homes. And we have taken the position that people are still going to have children. Utah is still going to be safer than the streets of Seattle. And our mountains are going to be prettier than any mountain on the face of the earth. And people are going to continue to want to live here. And so the risk for us right now is not buying. The risk for us right now is not believing in the future. The risk to us is doing what others are feeling like they should do, which is to pause. And never have I heard anybody make the statement to me is, you know, I wish we really hadn't bought a home 20 years ago. They were $72,000. And I've never heard that. Yep. And yet on the daily, I will hear, wow, do you know that in 2019, do you know that in 2018? We will hear that again. We will hear, do you know that in 2022? Do you know that in 2023? And our position is the bigger risk is not believing in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And you know, I mean, you know me, I've bought in a lot of Edge product over the years. And I've bought in, just so people I kind of understand this, is we've bought, Leah and I and my wife, we bought Edge property that I would consider, we paid over at the time. It's lost quite a bit of value since we bought it 12, 14 months ago. But the important point that I love in your risk equation is like frivolous versus controlled and kind of thought out. There were decisions we made that had backing where we were supported that if things switched directions, we could sustain those ones. And there was plenty before that has the story of, yeah, I'm glad I did, and I wish I would have done X more, right? So thank you.